Middle East is not where one would choose to go for a vacation, but it is the pinnacle for those seeking an adventure. An intrepid group of 15, 11 students and 4 staff, comprise the pilot program to Israel, Palestinian Territories, and Jordan, put on by a partnership between the Center for Ecological Living and Learning, CEL, and Euphrates Institute. Dave and Sue Oakes, who lead CEL, are former Prin grads who focus their programs on sustainability through community. They decided to team up with Middle East-focused Janessa Gans-Wilder, who heads the Euphrates Institute, now based at Principia College. Joined by Janessa's husband, Forrest Wilder, the Lowry RC, former Prin grad Caitlin Oakes as TA, and Forrest's brother Nathaniel as the trip videographer, it was overall an eclectic group of recent Principia graduates, current students, as well as students from other universities, all coming together to spend nearly 3 months in the region, focused on peace and sustainability.
لا برتاح في ليلة ولا بنساك ولا لقيت نهاية، ولو حتى ببعد ببقى معاك وما انتش معايا. لا برتاح في ليلة ولا بنساك ولا لقيت نهاية، ولو حتى ببعد ببقى معاك وما انتش معايا. أنا عايش ومش عايش ومش قادر على بعدك، ولا عارف في يوم أنسى ولا عايز حبيب بعدك. أنا عايش ومش عايش ومش قادر على بعدك، ولا عارف في يوم أنسى ولا عايز حبيب بعدك.
Beginning with a week-long orientation at Heifer International Farm outside of Boston, the students bonded through team-building exercises and received primers about the upcoming issues they would be studying and places they would be going in the Holy Land. The students experienced countless adventures and pleasant surprises during their time abroad. They witnessed stark divisions between Israelis and Palestinians, as well as the wide variety of perspectives even amongst those two groups. They explored the key challenges of sustainability in the region, chief among those water scarcity, as well as the root causes of conflict, such as fear and an attachment to the past. It was challenging at times to take in the looming and worsening environmental problems and to be confronted with seeming endless conflict. However, the students were inspired by Israeli and Palestinian sustainability activists working to shift lifestyle practices, and the peace builders practicing forgiveness and working towards uniting both sides. In the end, the students realized that both peace and sustainability must start within one's own life and be truly practiced and lived before one can have a lasting impact on others. Given unforgettable experiences like these and the warmth of the people they met, it's not surprising students describe the trip as life-transforming. And ask any one of them to define peace and sustainability in the context of the Middle East, and you are sure to learn how interconnected these key global issues are.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the longest political conflicts in modern history, lasting over 60 years. The conflict in the region, however, dates back to biblical times when Abraham and his descendants fought other inhabitants over the Promised Land. Though it is extremely important to understand the deep historical roots of this conflict, we will focus on the Israeli-Palestinian issue in the 20th century and today. At the end of World War I, Britain colonized the land of Palestine and then issued the Balfour Declaration that supported the right for Jews to establish a homeland in Palestine. As more Jews immigrated to Palestine, tensions rose and fighting began as both Arabs and incoming Jews were vying for the same land. After the Holocaust, international support for a separate Jewish state grew, and the United Nations attempted to settle the dispute by partitioning Palestine into 3 areas. 55% of the land would go to Jews, 45% would go to Palestinians, and 1% would comprise the city of Jerusalem under international jurisdiction. A year later, in May of 1948, Britain withdrew from Palestine, and the Jewish people declared their independence as the State of Israel. The Palestinians, followed by other Arab nations, attacked Israel in an attempt to protect what they perceived as Arab land. In this war, Israel scored a resounding victory against all surrounding Arab countries and gained a significant amount of territory. Over 700,000 Palestinians fled or were driven out of their homes and became refugees. The key is very important to the refugees because it symbolizes their right to return home. The ceasefire found Israel in control of 77% of the land, while neighboring Jordan took control of 22% of the land, the West Bank. Egypt took over Gaza, and 1%, the city of Jerusalem, was split between Israel and Jordan.
This defeat was humiliating and destabilizing for many Arab countries, who now, overwhelmed by Palestinian refugees, vowed revenge on Israel. In 1967, Israel preemptively attacked Egypt in response to threats of attack from the surrounding Arab countries. Over a period of 6 days, Israel won another decisive victory and tripled its territory. Israel gained control of the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza from Egypt, the Golan Heights from Syria, and the West Bank from Jordan. Israel still occupies the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank today. After 1967, Israel began building Jewish settlements, which are Jewish communities built on land within occupied Palestinian territories. These settlements are considered illegal by the international community and U.S. foreign policy. Unfortunately, they continue to expand and have become a major obstacle to peace negotiations. Over the next 20 years, there was constant stress and several outbreaks of fighting between Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. In 1987 and again in 2000, the Palestinians rose up in protest of Israeli occupation. Israel responded with strong military force. In 2002, Israel began building the separation barrier or wall, which is still under construction in sections today. This wall, 4 times as long and twice as high as the Berlin Wall, prohibits either side from interacting with the other, and therefore serves as a huge barrier for progressive peace in the region. Though there have been many peace initiatives over the last 6 decades, the conflict continues, and people on both sides suffer greatly. With over 60 years of failed negotiations, the region is in dire need of true peace and reconciliation.
Bethlehem, located in the West Bank, was our home base during the first 6 weeks of the abroad. We spent a majority of that 6 weeks staying in Beit Sahor, a town right outside Bethlehem, except for the 4-day trip to Hebron, the week-long trip to Jerusalem, and the 4-day trip to Aujah. While in Bethlehem, we divided our team into 3 separate service projects. 3 students volunteered at the Palestinian Wildlife Society, working in the office to revamp the company website. The other 8 students split into 2 groups of 4. Each group was assigned to a village outside Bethlehem that are suffering from water issues related to the encroaching Israeli settlements. Through field research and interviews, each team put together a report on their respective villages, which were supplied to Holy Land Trust, formally illustrating the needs of each village, especially for clean water. Holy Land Trust is a non-profit organization founded by Sami Awad, which promotes nonviolent activism and teaches nonviolence training. NGOs like Holy Land Trust are essential to the growth of the nonviolent peace movement. In Bethlehem, we had the chance to tour the Church of Nativity and to enjoy the liveliness of Nativity Square on a regular basis. Here in Bethlehem was where we found our best appetite for falafel and hummus, a local tradition. We even learned how to make them at Off Team, a beautiful restaurant next to Nativity Square. Our home base was at the guest house of a local Christian Palestinian family, who quickly became like family of our own. We also had experience interacting with local young adults when we learned how to dance debke at a local dance studio. We also had the chance to branch outside of Bethlehem a number of times when we visited refugee camps, went to Ramallah to see the thriving city and where the Palestinian Authority operates from, observed a protest from afar, toured the wall and observed the effects of it, and even went into a fraught settlement to hear the settlers' narrative. Amongst all these eye-opening experiences, and sometimes emotionally challenging days, we made sure to have some fun and truly live with our Palestinian friends. We played soccer at a local YMCA club a couple of times, had barbecues with our host family and friends, and even showed off our American moves as we hit the dance floor at the local disco.
Our most difficult week occurred in Hebron, which is a mere 30-minute bus ride from Bethlehem, though it feels like a whole different world. Hebron is considered the most volatile city in both the West Bank and Israel due to the political tension caused by Palestinians and extremist Jewish settlers living side by side in the downtown area of the second largest Palestinian city. Not only are there nearly 1,000 settlers living in the area, there are also some several thousand Israeli soldiers stationed in Hebron to protect them. In the span of 24 hours, we visited both the Palestinian side of the Old City and toured the Hebron settlement, which was challenging, though valuable to be able to see and speak with both sides. Hebron is home to the Tomb of the Patriarchs, the second holiest site in Judaism, and the fourth holiest site in Islam. According to the Bible, Abraham originally purchased the site as a burial place for his wife Sarah. This cave is important to all three monotheistic faiths because of their ties to Abraham. The current site is an old mosque that was split into both a synagogue and a mosque after a 1994 massacre in which a Jewish settler killed 29 Muslims while praying. Even though Arabs are not able to enter the synagogue side, as Americans we were fortunate to be able to go in both. While in Hebron, we also had several opportunities to meet with a variety of speakers, like the Deputy Governor of Hebron and a representative of a human rights organization called Beit Salem. Additionally, we got to tour a glass and ceramic factory and visited the oldest tree in the world, a 4,700-year-old oak tree which Abraham is believed to have sat under. Even though it was an arduous week, it was valuable just being in Hebron to experience the tension, which helped us understand the conflict even further. Though we saw many difficult things each day, and it was a tough week emotionally, it made our return to Bethlehem all the sweeter.
Our time in Jerusalem was full of fascinating meetings with both Israelis and Palestinians, including U.S. Foreign Service diplomats, IDF veterans, interfaith dialogue organizations, members of the Third Jewish Temple movement, teachers, rabbis, and a Muslim sheikh. However, the diversity of our experience cannot begin to describe the varied history this city has seen, which is my favorite part about Jerusalem. This place has an incredible history, as it was the center of the ancient world. It brought together culture, language, religion, and ideas to be traded via camel trains and other travelers. From a religious standpoint, Jerusalem is sacred to all three monotheistic religions, and it is incredible to be able to see a Muslim sheikh, a Jewish rabbi, and a Greek Orthodox priest walking down the same street at any given time. On a personal level, I discovered that while I loved the historical religiosity of this city, its alleged holiness did not transform my own faith in God. I watched Jewish women crying and praying at the Western Wall, Muslim men kneeling in prayer outside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Christians praying and weeping over the crucifixion of Jesus at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. However, none of these holy places gave me any feeling of a heightened connection to God. I realize that I feel closest to God when I'm in a beautiful place and can see His creation at work, not necessarily at a physical place that is supposed to be sacred. So as a whole, Jerusalem blew my mind with its history and religious significance. While I didn't feel a spiritual connection to the actual places, I appreciated seeing others feel that connection.
One afternoon, our group traveled up north in the West Bank to 2 neighboring cities, Nablus and Tulkarem. Here we got to visit a local university, an organization addressing factory pollution in the town, the wall or separation barrier, and we also got to speak with a Muslim sheikh. We met a local Palestinian man who ushered us into his building, which turned out to be a wedding hall and party reception area. After speaking with us for a few minutes about the effects of pollution in the village, he ran over to the other side of the hall and began blasting Arabic music. Spontaneously, we all jumped up and began dancing around the dance floor, showing off the little debke we had learned earlier in the trip, laughing and being laughed at, and letting everything go. It was an amazing moment where we could interact with these Palestinians through music, dancing, and laughter, despite the challenging and sobering stories we were seeing and hearing. Even amongst great conflict, there are these wonderful examples of joy and love that pervade. That night, when we returned to Bethlehem, we had a Skype conference with the Principia community. It was great to see some of your faces and get to share a little bit of our experience with friends back home.
Auja is a rural desert climate in the Jordan Valley just about an hour north of the Dead Sea. In Auja, we lived at the Friends of the Earth Middle East Eco Center, where we volunteered at a local farm, went on local hikes to ancient monasteries, had lunch in Jericho, the oldest city in the world, visited Mount Temptation, and spent a day at the Dead Sea learning about the dire conditions of its receding water level. The highlight of this 4-day trip away from Bethlehem was being out in the wilderness a bit more and spending a couple of hours floating in the Dead Sea. Upon heading back to Bethlehem, we stopped at EcoMe, a self-sustaining community bringing Israelis and Palestinians together for peace.
While in the Auja region, we visited Rotem, an Israeli settlement community in the beautiful remote Jordan Valley of the West Bank. This environmentally focused community was a contrast from the urban and city scenes we had been in up to that point on the trip. We got a tour of the village upon arriving, enjoyed a feast of fresh local food, and got our hands dirty building mud adobe bricks with local community members.
We departed Bethlehem for the last time in the beginning of March and headed 5 hours south to the Arava Desert. It was nice to be back in the nature environment with beautiful views of the mountains on the outskirts of the desert landscapes. For the 4 days we were there, we stayed on Kibbutz Lotan, a very welcoming community with a shared vision for sustainability. A kibbutz is a Jewish community in which all members work to support the community, and all funds of income are pooled, and then evenly distributed to all members. On the kibbutz, we enjoyed learning about how their community works, meeting local community members, contributing by planting and harvesting in their local community garden, and participating in their Shabbat service. Shabbat is a day of rest that is observed from Friday sundown until sundown on Saturday. Orthodox Jewish law limits the use of modern-day technology during Shabbat in order to protect the integrity of a day of rest and spiritual revitalization. It was a wonderful experience, learning about the essence of the Jewish faith, as well as learning about a unique community. During one of our days there, we traveled an hour south to the Red Sea, where we enjoyed snorkeling and some beach time. On our last day in the Arava Desert, we visited a nearby kibbutz, which has a small sustainability college, which is the leading center for solar energy research and testing in Israel. We met with professors, counselors, and students to get an understanding of their research and the work they're doing to preserve the environment.
Tel Aviv is known as a very liberal and modern city. Though we spent our very first night in the Middle East in Tel Aviv, it was valuable to have 4 more days in this coastal city near the end of our abroad. While in Tel Aviv, we spent some time on the beach, enjoyed copious amounts of frozen yogurt, met with various environmentally focused NGOs, visited the botanical gardens, spoke with some university students, and saw Pamela Anderson. Yes, Pamela Anderson. Of course, we took quite a few pictures, and Eric was really excited to have Pam sign his hat. Other than this celebrity encounter, we were so fortunate to be briefed by the North American spokesman of the Israeli Defense Force about Israel's military strategy, which helped us to understand a lot of Israel's concerns in terms of its security threats. We were also grateful for a bit of free time during our stay in Tel Aviv because of our increased workload as we neared the end of the semester.
After our time in Tel Aviv, we headed up north to visit Galilee, the Golan Heights, and the city of Nazareth. The amount of history in this region is incredible. During our 2 days in Galilee, we toured around many of the holy sites we read about in the New Testament. On our first day in Galilee, we visited the mountain where Jesus is said to have received and delivered the Sermon on the Mount. Amidst the rain, we slid down the slope to the Sea of Galilee and got our shoes and pants covered in a nice thick layer of mud. We were laughing and throwing out jokes the entire way down, a common practice on the abroad. A few of us attempted and failed to walk on the water, but were able to clean our muddy feet. Our second day in the Galilee area, we went to see the Jordan River baptism site, where John the Baptist is believed to have baptized Jesus. We got to visit the Hula Nature Reserve and the old biblical fishing town of Capernaum, where the apostles Peter, Andrew, James, and John are believed to have lived. We then traveled further north to visit the Golan Heights, a highly disputed area between Israel and Syria. We met members of the Druze community, an esoteric branch of Islam, and heard about some of the interesting religious dynamics in the region. It was fascinating learning about the history and the politics of this small area, and being able to see across the borders to Syria and Lebanon. We even got to see some snow.
Next, we traveled south a few hours to the city of Nazareth, an Arab-Israeli village in northern Israel. Here we stayed with homestay families for 2 nights and got the opportunity to volunteer for a few hours in a local elementary school. Trying to play games and plan activities with a rowdy bunch of non-English speaking 3rd graders and a teacher who spoke very little English was interesting to say the least. But we still had fun trying to communicate through crazy hand signals, lots of pointing, smiles, and laughter. That night at my homestay, my host sister, Amira, dressed Sarah and I up with scarves, jewelry, and makeup, and we all danced to Arabic dubke music until 1 in the morning. During those 3 days, we were constantly offered food and gifts, and I've never felt more welcomed and embraced by another culture. This sense of openness and warm hospitality is in part what made traveling in this region such a wonderful experience.
We were really grateful to have a harmonious border crossing from Israel into Jordan. From the border, we drove 3 hours through the desert countryside until we arrived in Amman, Jordan's capital. Here, we visited an ancient Roman amphitheater and some other ancient ruins. We also got to meet with a government official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, learning all about Jordanian politics and Jordan's role as a peacemaking state and stabilizer in the region. We also got to meet with 2 U.S. foreign officers. Next, we headed to Petra, one of the 7 wonders of the world. We were blessed to have our wonderful guide Elias with us for this portion of our Jordan experience. Though we did not actually see Harrison Ford, we did get to visit the treasury, which appears in Indiana Jones, and also hiked up to the monastery, which is equally as exciting. While in Petra, many members of our group got to ride camels. We finished our day enjoying a beautiful sunset as we walked back through the enormous rock canyons.
Our next adventure took place in Wadi Rum, though I'm pretty sure none of us really knew what to expect. Upon arriving in what seemed like the middle of nowhere, we were asked to load our stuff in the back of 3 4x4 jeeps, and then we were whisked away through the desert to a Bedouin campsite. Cruising through the desert, incredible stars overhead and wind blowing in our hair, was absolutely unreal, and I felt like we were on the set of a Hollywood movie. Our final destination was in this gorgeous canyon surrounded by ancient sandstone cliffs, where we spent the night enjoying Arabic music and delicious food. The next day, we did a 12-mile hike through the desert, which was awesome. We passed lots of camels and got to enjoy many serene views of gigantic rock formations, juxtaposed with miles and miles of sand. That night, we got to sleep under the stars, enjoying the quiet of the desert. The following morning, we got up early to hike up a mountain, to see this beautiful rock arch. And then we hopped back into the jeeps and cruised across the desert to get back to the bus to return to Amman.
Jordan is the 4th poorest country in terms of water resources. We learned firsthand about this during our final week at an eco park in the Jordan River Valley. Other than enjoying a lot of class time, we also had the chance to visit a Jordanian village called Hema and do some volunteer work. This was an experience because we were told that we would be volunteering in the village, but instead we pulled off to the side of the road en route and spent the next 2.5 hours hauling brush across the road and picking up trash. We definitely had quite the audience too, and I'm pretty sure it was somewhat of a shock and awe experience for most of the Jordanian observers, mainly men, who had never seen Americans work before, nor women do such work. After this adventure, the group had a small tour of a nearby village, and then the students headed back to their cabins at the eco park to finish up assignments and present the action plans they each developed. And finally, back to Amman, where we celebrated together all the good times and all that we learned and the growth experienced before bidding the Middle East farewell.
I have never undergone such a transformation as I have throughout the past 3 months in the Middle East. Not only did I learn tremendously about myself and what I hold true, but I grew in my knowledge of what I've been labeling as the other. I learned how wrong my preconceived conceptions of the Middle East and its inhabitants were. They were just totally false, and I learned to never again trust stereotypes. Also, this trip has helped me to develop a global focus, and I can now read the newspaper with understanding and compassion instead of throwing it carelessly aside, thinking that whatever happens in Libya, Palestine, Japan, or any other country will never affect me. I know better now, and I want to help plant that seed of global awareness in anyone I meet. I am also so grateful for our group because we immediately clicked and formed a necessary support base for each other. Whether or not we were in class, we were constantly engaged in discussions about anything and everything. Religion, peace, conflict, sustainability, you name it, and I bet we talked about it at least once. It was a 24/7 hands-on learning experience, and I loved it. I highly recommend this trip or any other solo trip to anyone and everyone.
To say that this trip was a life-changing experience would certainly be a cliche, but it is nothing short of the truth. Entering the abroad, I had what I thought to be high expectations of growth. My expectations were far exceeded. The experiences we had were unique and remarkable. Among my favorite were living in the old city of Jerusalem, traveling through the vast climates in Israel, and befriending local villages. I may someday forget the people that we met, the places that we saw, and the food that we ate, but I will never forget the lessons I learned and the change this trip has made in my life. Our experience was humbling, being shown the reality of the global community, and the need humanity has for morally sounded global citizens. Although there were plenty of hilarious, enriching, and exciting experiences, more importantly, these 3 months made an impact on my character as a Christian man. Through learning about the dire status of our environmental resources, social conflict, and religiously motivated negation of pluralistic thinking, I was awakened to my true responsibilities. We must live to ensure that the unwritten commandment that we shall give our children better than we had ourselves is fulfilled in a global community which embraces sustaining our environment, has a collective loathing of conflict, and accepts more than one idea. It is now a part of my being, a daily responsibility, to give to this world my unselfish compassion, my wholehearted love, and my unwavering desire to give the children of tomorrow a brighter future.
Our abroad to the Middle East was life-changing, filled with tremendous growth. It was great to be able to experience the conflict firsthand and, as a religion major, to see all of the holy sites for myself. It was also fascinating to learn so much about nonviolent resistance and conflict resolution, while getting to hear from inspiring speakers like Sami Awad, who shared such healing ideas. I cannot believe all that we did and accomplished in just 3 months. I'm so very grateful for how quickly our group became a family, and that we were able to go through the difficult experiences we did as a group. It was so fun to add people to our family too, as we went along and met such wonderful people. I encourage everyone to go to the Middle East and see it for yourself. It has quickly become one of my favorite parts of the world, and I cannot wait to go back.
This trip to the Middle East has been an immensely powerful and life-changing experience. Throughout our time in the region, I was challenged to drop preconceived notions, open my thought to very different and conflicting narratives, and leave behind my old comfort zone. I am so grateful for our amazing and supportive abroad family. We became very close very quickly, and I couldn't have asked for a better or more fun group. Amidst all the turmoil and conflict, what has stuck with me is the laughter, the amazing hospitality we were greeted with, the wonderful people we met, and the stories of hope. Even in the face of oppression and political conflict, we can find examples of joy and love. And while love may sound like a wishy-washy concept, I have come to believe that it is the most important and real power there is to healing our world today. I have come away from the experience empowered to follow the examples of the many inspirational people I met and become more active. This trip has also shown me the great importance of becoming informed as a simple yet crucial step each one of us can take to making a difference in the world. We all have a role to play in educating ourselves and others. So let's start now